And then he had to reassure me that he is probably quite different from the people I've had to deal with during my reporting career, and I probably haven't come across this sort of level of understanding and intelligence before, and I need to just understand who I'm in the room with, and what I'm hearing is
And
true. So actually, it was the first time we'd met face to face, but I did feel like I knew him pretty well because I have written about him over the years, and obviously familiar with his son. And I've also reflected a bit and written about it in the Times about, as much as Elon Musk never wants to talk about being South African, for me, he is quite a quintessential South African character, and why that is. So yeah, they're a fascinating family, and I think I did get a much better impression of both Elon Musk through his father, and really, I think they're very, very similar characters.
yeah, that's really interesting because often people who are very similar clash a bit. And what is the current state of their relationship?
I think things have softened. They did have a reunion at the end of last year. Errol went to the launch of one of the projects, I think the space project, and met a lot of the grandchildren he hadn't met before. I mean, he sort of struggled to remember, what the combinations are and who the mothers are, who the twins are, and so on. But Elon Musk has a lot of children. I think it's 10. So I understand that. So they're obviously in touch a lot. I think it's possibly a bit of a one-way street. I think Errol communicates a lot with his son about giving him feedback on what he's doing and how it's going down, and suggestions perhaps for another way of doing it or improvement. I'm not quite sure how well that's received, but nevertheless, Errol does follow Elon's business, his views, the way he's conducting himself very, very closely.
Is it fair to say that Elon has come around to his father's worldview? Because you tell a great anecdote in the piece about a dinner they had, or a lunch they had back in South Africa with a load of Elon's Hollywood mates back in 2016. And Errol made a comment about Donald Trump that went down very badly. But given that now Elon is one of Donald Trump's donors, it appears that Elon has come around to his father's way of seeing things.
Absolutely, and I think Errol feels very vindicated by that, and what he said to me, he said he feels that, if you're white South Africans leaving South Africa, going to other countries and trying to integrate with quite liberal sections of society, Hollywood, the tech world, as Elon and his brothers and sisters have, then I think white South Africans do feel a bit on the back foot. This very heavy history they've got to bring with them about apartheid and where they stood on that. What did they do? What your parents? I mean, you get a lot of that. How can you live in South Africa? What did your parents do during apartheid? So I think they had to have a story ready. And there was all this expectation that they were going to be racist, intolerant, prejudiced. And as far as Errol's concerned, they all had to put on a big show. And all those children, he's got 5 who've gone to America, they've all gone through the same experience. So as far as he's concerned, it's sort of just what you have to do to sort of reinvent yourself in another country. If you listen to Elon Musk, he doesn't sound like he's from Pretoria. I mean, I've lived out of the UK for most of my adult life. I sound like I left yesterday. Elon Musk doesn't. We see that with Charlize Theron as well. She's an Afrikaner. She spent all her childhood. She didn't go to Hollywood till she was in her 20s. There's no hint that she's from South Africa. It's one of those accents and one of those histories, if you're a white South African, that you wear very heavily. And I think that need to reinvent yourself or distance yourself from this very fraught history, it seems very important.
Yeah, and yet it was interesting you said earlier, Jane, that you still think Elon Musk is a very South African figure. What do you mean by that?
Well, when I say South African figure, I'm sort of talking about white male South Africans who, he's a product of his upbringing. This is a sort of a very feisty society where, things aren't done with you. People have to make a plan. The government's not going to sort it out for you. Especially a boys' school, growing up in the 90s as he did, bullying wasn't a thing. That's just what boys do. Fighting, calling each other's names, survival of the fittest. That was and still is actually in many schools, boys' schools in South Africa. That's just how it is. And he's come through that system. he's had to be very confident of himself. His father was very tough with him, tough with all those children. They've got to, make it on their own, not be spoilt. And as a result, he's gone to America and he's sort of made it. He's made it quite big, and he does have these quite sort of arrogant attitudes around women, around very archetypal ideas about being a man in a house and what everyone's role is. I mean, I think that's very much speaks to a childhood he had in 90s South Africa.
There's a great quote in your piece where I think Errol Musk says something. You describe your eyes widening, and then he responds with, Jane, when you're talking to us, you're talking to people at a deeper level than the average person you'll be speaking to. Believe me, we are more intelligent, my family. We are not stupid. I mean, you can hear Elon coming through in Errol there, can't you?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't, I've been reporting from Africa for a long time, so I'm not really exposed to the sort of right-wing conspiracy theories that probably, people up there in the northern hemisphere are, people who cover American politics. That's not my world. So when he was going on about sort of, fixed elections and the dark state, I mean, I've sort of heard about this on podcasts. I've never actually been in a room with somebody who is telling me that as fact. And the queer world leaders who are married to men, and obviously I'm looking like, are you serious? I mean, is this really a thing? I'd never actually heard anyone saying it to me in real life, so I was quite surprised, and my face sort of looked a bit shocked, and then he had to reassure me that he is probably quite different from the people I've had to deal with during my reporting career, and I probably haven't come across this sort of level of understanding and intelligence before, and I need to just understand who I'm in the room with and what I'm hearing is true.
It was alarming and quite funny at the same time. So I think it just reflects that these sort of extreme ideas are accepted as facts in that family, and it's a reflection of their deeper intelligence that the rest of us haven't heard it or aren't going along with it.
And obviously, Elon Musk himself has been in the news a lot this week with his comments about Keir Starmer, calling him two-tier Keir, accusing the UK of having two-tier policing. He says the UK is on the verge of a civil war. What did Errol make of those comments?
He sent me a note. He said, "This is what I've fed back to Elon on this." He's absolutely on point. Actually, he sent me the note again last night, just so I was up to speed on exactly what his feedback had been to Elon. He's absolutely up to speed, and as far as Errol is concerned, Keir Starmer just exudes weakness. They couldn't even be in the same arena if it wasn't for him leading Britain in a faked election. He and Elon would just never meet because they're not the same caliber of people. And now Elon's, got his card marked, then, Keir Starmer's finished, because once Elon calls you out, then really game over. And that's the impression again. I mean, Errol Musk's mother is from Britain. They have been to the UK quite a lot. He did show me some family pictures of them sort of looking at quite, English looking towns, and they'd gone there quite a lot. He talked a lot about how the dim-witted populace in the UK, how we're all standing for the royal family and not waiting for the government to sort things out for us, and our poor work ethic, our really crappy food. Had a lot to say about that, and just a rather benighted country that has punched above its weight for a very, very long time, but now weakness being revealed in these riots. And he did say, it's not correct to describe them as far right, or these people as or any sort of racist element. There is a two-tier policing system, and people are just trying to rise up quite rightly against a system in which they're being discriminated against.
But I think what I found sort of surprising in a way about your piece with Errol Musk, Jane, is that, you could say on the face of it, he appears to be an older, slightly tetchier, slightly less successful version of his famous son, Elon. And yet, when he comes on to talking about his grandchild, and we should explain, Elon Musk has one child who is transgender, Errol's attitude towards that seems far more progressive than Elon's, because Elon has said that this child is essentially dead to him, and it is the victim of the woke mind virus, whereas Errol's taken a very different stance.
Yeah, I find that surprising and really touching, actually, because he talked about his recent travel to America, where, you know, he'd been left with this impression that LGBTQ issues dominated, that trans was a real thing and it was just everywhere. He said, and gender neutral news, and he went there and he said, it's nowhere. It's absolutely nowhere. I mean, this is just an idea being forced upon people. And I said, well, hang on. It's in your own family, is it not? Has not one of your grandchildren now transitioned to female? You know, tell me about your own experience with that. Thinking perhaps that he would echo his son's attitude, which is that the son Xavier had just been killed by the woke mind virus and forced into this. And Errol had a much more reflective, gentler attitude to it. And, you know, he really paused. He recalled that grandchild, how they'd been as growing up, what was different about them. And he immediately slipped into these gender neutral pronouns, calling them, didn't struggle with that, didn't hesitate for that a minute, and said, I'd said to Elon, you know, in history, this has existed. In history, this has existed. I think you've got to accept and appreciate, you know, who they are and not talk about who they were, and really telling his son to get over it, get over that. And I thought that was quite a sensitive issue on which to tackle his revered son, who could do no wrong, and try and put him straight. I was very struck by that, and it seemed very genuine, and from a place of soul searching and looking within to see, actually, is this real? Can we go with this and accept it?